So let's go ahead and get started.
All right.
Okay, so before we even get started, every single time we do a ghost story. This time I'm going to be reading a story in honor of Carly. It's her book on Amazon, A City of Ghosts and the Beyond. This ghost story is in chapter 5. It's called The Hanging Woman and the Haunted Apartment. So, her name was Alice Francis. Her address was 208 12th and a half street. And that time the house was built, they had moved into in like a week prior to the death. So Alice lived there with her mom. Alice's mother's name was Miss Francis, who had to tell the sad story of her daughter's death. Like, that's pretty traumatic, right? So Alice that day told her mother that she would go to church because the weather was, fairly nice. Her mother then, in return, told Alice she should go too. Allison told her mother, Miss Francis, she would go later with her aunt, Miss Knoll. Um, they both left the house like together around like 10 a.m. Alice went the back way, and Miss Francis went to Grace Lutheran Church through the front. When the mother returned from the home, she sat by the warm stove to warm up since it was getting just a little bit chilly out. It's like a nice day, how it gets like cold at night. So Miss Francis happened um, to look into the kitchen and saw Alice's wrap on the chair, which would indicate that she was home. She also noticed Alice's key in the lock and knew that she had returned home. Alice was very careful when she just never left her keys in the lock itself. So this intrigued Miss Francis to where her daughter might be in the house, and if she was in a hurry and accidentally left her behind. So Alice had been acting strange lately for the past like couple of months. Um, the mother was afraid to leave Alice alone only agreed to leave her alone on this day since she was going to see her Aunt Miss Knoll while she was at church. Miss Frances started looking for her daughter in the house and called her and walked into each room to find her, and she went through the house and she noticed in eerie silence. She went up to the second floor and there was still no Alice. Miss Frances finally took the attic stairs and walked up. She reached the top of the stairs and she had seen her daughter hanging near a window in the attic. It was an awful, awful scene. Miss Frances told the paper this. Like, she said, I called on my little grandson. He ran to get Mr. McKinney on Spring Road to help me get her body down. Alice wasn't well for about 6 months prior to the hanging. Alice worried a great deal about the house that they just brought and was afraid they wouldn't pay for it. Um, when the suicide was discovered, Dr. Lingo Mingle summoned her body was still warm. She had used a piece of her clothesline, which had doubled by passing it through the hole twice in the wall above the window. At the time of her suicide, Alice was 37 years old. Alice went through a divorce about 10 years prior. Alice's depression was getting worse by the years. Alice's own father committed suicide a few years earlier and shooting himself. She had never visited her aunt that day.